today's project is a Tamiya craft tool electric handy drill. It's actually a kit that you buy and assemble. Become fairly popular with modelers because of the low speed that the drill actually turns when assembled. And I've actually removed the contents of this box, but take a look at all sides. Okay, and inside the box there is Tamiya craft tools being depicted, the different components that they make for the hobbyist. Inside the box we find a pack of gray parts, a pack of blue and orange parts, and a pack of electrical parts. And then we also have the assembly instructions. So the first step, it says items required for assembly: screwdriver large, screwdriver small, long nose pliers, side cutters, a modeling knife, and 2 AA batteries. And step 1, attaching the battery terminals, is the first step in the process. So the battery terminals attached to this part. I'm going to go ahead and open this bag. And as in our models, this is sprue B component 5, and it's asking for component part B5. I'm going to use this pair of side cutter pliers. Got a fairly thin blade which will let me get close to the sprue and not damage the plastic. I'm going to go ahead and just cut that part from the sprue. And we'll open our electronics. Okay, I've opened my electronics. I also got a little plastic container here. What I'm going to do is basically dump all the electronics in this container to help keep these parts together, since they are loose, unlike the other parts that are on sprues. We'll actually keep these parts in their little individual little bags also, to keep these parts together as well as possible. And as step 1 instructed, we need B5 and we need the battery terminal. So we'll get the battery terminal. And it slides under this little lip. And snaps in place like so. So that's attached. So here we have this part, and the battery clip is snapped in place. Now they want the other component part put in there also, the other battery clip. So here we have this battery clip. And they're showing it hooked basically exactly the same way here. Oops. Simply hooks here, move it down, and snap it in place. Okay, now that one is hooked in place also. Both of them are fairly secure. And again, I was using this knife to force it, make sure it was forced down around that and was indeed flush and flat with the plastic, which it is. Okay? So that's all of step one. Now step two, attaching the motor. So we'll get the motor out, and it has a bushing, a gear actually. So let's see, the pinion gear gets attached to the motor, and they're showing basically taking this, putting it like this to get it started, and then just pressing it against the tabletop to seat the pinion gear on the motor shaft. And now that is fully seated. Then they're showing this motor is put up through here. Let's see, according to this there is a notch and an open curved piece that appears to be at the top. So this goes at the bottom. Now this particular kit has a little flash here. I'm going to just go ahead and trim that off. Okay. Again, the motor with this open slot to the top. Fits in and presses in place, and it definitely was a snap as it's seated. Okay. And it's not seating as well as I would have hoped. So it's not going flush, fully flush there. And there does seem to be a little flash that I missed here on this front side. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. Alright, so the motor is assembled to that. Okay. Ready for step 3. Alright, with step 3, we open the bag with the blue and orange component parts. And we take the 2 shells out for the left and right parts. Okay, again using these diagonal cutters where I can get close to this piece without breaking into it. Simply trim this sprue away from the housing. Now When I flip this housing over, this is component part 2, and this was component part A. This is A. When you sprue A, component part 2, and then component part 1. So go ahead and cut it loose also. A little piece sticking out. Since this is actually going to be on the outside, we go ahead and get my file. Set of diamond files, and we get the flap one. Get this one here, and just kind of pull that far down. I don't want to get it too far down because I'm not going to paint this. I just want to make sure that that's good and smooth. Okay, and that is this other piece here. We'll do the same with it. And up here at the top, just another little edge. I'll knock off of that. Same with this one. Okay, and again, like I was saying, this is going to be a tool that's going to get beat up, so I'm not worried about it being perfect. Just a little cleanup to make sure there's not anything that would catch on something when I'm using it. And I guess to finish up this sprue, I'll go ahead and get this battery compartment, which is part 3, and get it cut loose from the sprue. Battery compartment cover. So we're through with the blue sprue. And we'll go back in this little edge and knock it down. You don't have to use a file. You could just as easily have came in with an X-Acto knife and carefully trim that edge. However you prefer to do it. Either method is very acceptable. So, okay, now we've got the 2 side parts, and this part, which is the part without the batteries, is the one we start on. Because as you can see, this part, which is the A1 part, has a place for the batteries to go in there. And it has applied grease to several places inside this housing. These are the screws I'm going to be needing, so we'll go ahead and open it. And this is the grease. Okay, looking at this sprue again, this is B. And the first step is we've got the shaft stopper, the coil spring, and B7. This B sprue, part 7. Cut this out. It's pretty smooth. It's internal parts, so I'm not going to worry about it. It also has, though, this shaft stopper and a coil spring. So here's my little coil spring. So the shaft stopper sits down in here like so. Okay. And then the spring sits over the top of the shaft stopper. And then this piece slides down over the top of the shaft stopper. I'm going to get lined up. Okay. Now it looks like this needs to be pushed in place. So here's our shaft stopper. And we have seated and snapped the shaft stopper cover in place, and as you can see, the shaft stopper is working. Next step is we need the B6 and B4 piece and a small screw. So going back to the B sprue, we'll get the B4 piece first, which is the inside piece. So there's B4. And the B6 is on the outside of the drill, so we'll go ahead and cut B6 with it. So we put the lock handle in the down position. We go ahead and we put this, and notice that this part has the rounded part towards the top. And we will put that in place towards the top. Okay, I think it's going to be actually easier to put this one, set it in place, because this one snaps over the top of it. Again, we'll make sure that the lock is in the downward position. And we'll push that in place. Now that's in place, but in order to hold it in place, it does need a screw. It doesn't snap. It must have the screw. Progress. But we need these small screws. So we go back to the bag of screws. Go ahead and lay the bag of screws out here. And it's the small screw here. It's 2 by 8 millimeter. Okay. And it's a pretty small, short screw. And I'm pretty sure that this is the one. Set it in place. Put the lock back on it once again with the latch in the down position. If I find the right size screwdriver, I believe this is going to be at perfect size. And tighten this latch down, lock down. And push it back to the lock position or forward to the unlock position. It's not really super tight, but it is tight enough it's not going to go anywhere. So that actually completes the upper part. Now we've got to work on the lower part here. And we need component part B8, B2, B3, another spring, and another 2 by 12 millimeter, which is the longer screw here, to put this together. So let me go ahead and remove B8 first. Again, B sprue, component part 8. Clip it free of the sprue. There's B8. We also need B2. I'm going to go ahead and free it from the sprue also. And then we need B3. And there's component part 3, B3. So we'll clip it loose from the B sprue. Okay, showing B3 component part being down here in place, like so. B2 hooks over the far end with the round hole and this raised part to the bottom, so it will be like so. It also needs this little collet, and I believe this little brass collet is what it's looking for. So we'll put it in the center here. Alright, snaps right in place. So now this little, they call it a bushing. And then it will slide like so.